Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I am so glad you're here. Today we've got a medical related video and I'm really excited about it. I love doing medical videos. I know a lot of you really enjoy them and it's been a little while since I've done one, so I'm pretty excited about this. And what we're talking about today is a first aid kit. It's pre-built, it's budget friendly, it's high quality, and it's pretty comprehensive. So it kind of checks a lot of boxes for me in terms of something like this, in terms of a pre-built kit. And it comes from a company called LTC, or Live the Creed, and it is their advanced first aid kit. And you can see the contents right there if you want to pause the screen. And there's their website, ltcreed.com. So not too long ago, I was shopping online and I purchased this item here, which you will see a video on. This is a pocket EDC trauma organizer, which you can buy either empty or full. I bought it empty. You'll see a video on this coming up soon. But while I was on the website, I saw this and I thought it was a really good value for what you actually get. And as I've mentioned in the past, especially with trauma kits, I'm generally not a proponent of pre-built kits because I think they're generally lacking either quality, quantity, or they're just not as useful as you might think. So this costs $19.99. So this is a $20 kit, which I think is a great price considering everything it's got going on. So we'll break into this thing. We'll talk about what's in it and why I think it is such a good value. If you were to go onto Amazon, for example, and find just some generic no-name first aid kit for say $10 to $20, and look at it, look at the contents, and kind of judge the quality, I think you'd find that this is a far superior option. So let's start with how it's packaged. This is exactly how it comes to you, which I like that it gives the contents list very clearly on the front. And I also love that it is stored in one of my favorite vessels, which is a lock sack. And lock sacks are made in the USA. They are airtight, they're watertight, they're super heavy mill, they're very thick, very durable, double zippers. I just think they're great products. It's the exact same brand, not the exact same size that I use for my EDC pocket trauma kit that I built. And I did do a video on this. If you haven't seen that, you can check my medical playlist, but it's the same brand. It's a lock sack and I just love these things. And the great thing about it is you can see all of the contents. So with a lot of medical kits, or really any, whether it's an EDC bag or whatever, if it's like made of nylon, for example, you can't see what's in it. So I do like that it is clear and all of your contents are pretty easily identifiable. And it's just a good quality bag and you can add to it. This particular kit leaves you plenty of room to add additional band-aids, medications, tools like a flashlight, tweezers, things like that. So I like the package, I like the form factor. This particular lock sack is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by, I think it's 6 by 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 by 5, we'll call it. So I think this particular kit would be best suited for an EDC bag, a glove box, a roadside emergency kit, office drawer, purse, your kid's backpack. You know, if you have a kid who's in middle school or high school, I would totally give one of these to my kid to put in their backpack, throw it on your boat, your RV. I mean, the sky's the limit. It's just a good kind of basic first aid kit. It's a little more than a boo-boo kit, but by no means a trauma kit. So what do we get? We'll just pull all the contents out here, and it's packaged pretty nicely in terms of how things are arranged. And of course, you can rearrange that to your liking. But let's just pull everything out and kind of lay it on the table and talk through it. So we'll just leave the bag kind of up there in the corner. So let me somewhat organize these things and we will get into it. And one thing you'll notice throughout this, and I'll probably mention it a couple times, is that all of the components that are in this kit are of pretty high quality in terms of like the brand names that are in here. None of it is like truly just like junk no-name stuff. And a lot of the brands may not be super recognizable to somebody who's not in the medical field per se, but for those that are, I think you'll recognize a lot of these brands. So let's get a little more organized and we'll get into it. Another thing that's great about this kit is that it doesn't neglect the medications. I think that's one thing in most first aid kits, especially the really inexpensive ones that are pre-built, you will find that it lacks medications. And that's something that I think is pretty critical to include in a first aid kit. So it's not super organized, but it's all on screen. So let's get into it. So let's start with the kind of the very basic stuff that you would expect to see in any first aid kit, and that's going to be Band-Aids, right? It's one of the most common things that I personally use in any of my medical kits. So you get 5 of the just kind of standard 1" by 3" Band-Aids, and these are made by Coverlet, which is a name brand. It's not Band-Aid brand, but these are of pretty decent quality. So you get 5 of those, which is nice. And then they step it up a little further, and they give you a couple, actually 3 larger size Band-Aids. So these are going to be your 3" by 2", right? So for a slightly larger wound, and you get 3 of those. Again, same brand, being Coverlet. So let's say you've got something that's a little bigger than that even. They step it up even further, and they give you a 4x4 gauze pad. It has 8 individual layers of gauze, and Covidin right here is, again, kind of a well-known name brand. It's made here in the USA, so you get a 4x4, which is 8 ply, so it's pretty thick, and that'll absorb a decent amount of blood, so that's nice. And then they also give you some Steri-Strips, right? So these are wound closures, and these are made by 3M, which is a very well-known brand. That's a household name, so those are fantastic. And when you're applying Steri-Strips, sometimes they don't really want to stick very well. And one thing you can use to kind of prep an area for the use of something like a Steri-Strip is an iodine wipe. And yes, they do include those, so we'll get to that. So you got your Steri-Strips, and then they take it even a step further, right, when it comes to trauma. So you've got your small Band-Aids, your large Band-Aids, your Gauze Pad, your Steri-Strips, and then they include a single unit of North American Rescue compressed gauze. So this is 4.1 yards in length, right? So that's what, over 12 feet long and like almost 5 inches wide. This is a tremendous amount of gauze vacuum compressed into a small package. You would be shocked how much gauze is actually in one of these things. It'll absorb quite a bit of blood. And again, North American Rescue, a nice recognizable name brand. So that's something you're not going to see in most pre-built first aid kits. They'll typically stop at Band-Aids and gauze pads, but here we do have the compressed gauze. So I like that for the simple fact that if I have a wound that is moderate in severity and requires some actual bleeding control, I don't have to break out my expensive components out of my trauma kit. I can just grab this compressed gauze, and it's actually gonna serve me pretty well. So that's kind of your trauma stuff for the most part. We've got some topical wipes here. So we've got 2 iodine prep pads, and those are made by Medline. We've got 2 Purell hand sanitizing wipes to clean yourself either prior to or after rendering aid to somebody, and then 2 alcohol prep pads made by McKesson. Again, if you work in the medical field, you'll probably recognize a lot of these names. What else do we get? We get some gloves. So we get a pair of what they call bear claw gloves. These come from North American Rescue, very high quality, and they are light in color. These are tan, so you're going to be able to see blood and things like that pretty easily. You can also write on them, which is nice. Next up, we've got a Cpr Barrier Device. It's essentially a face shield to create a barrier between you and the person who you're providing CPR to, which again is something you don't tend to see in most first aid kits. But things can sometimes escalate, things can happen, and so to have something like this, because it's pretty small, doesn't take up a ton of space, I like that they threw that in there. As far as topical stuff, we've got some burn gel as well, and this is great stuff. It's made by Water Gel. It does have some lidocaine, which is for pain relief and kind of numbing, essentially, the area. And this would be for minor burns, like sunburns and things like that. You wouldn't want to put this on, for example, like a full thickness or a 3rd degree type burn, but you do get some burn gel, which I like. You also get 2 splinter outs. I've talked about these in the past and actually shown them in the past. on one of my Boo Boo Kit videos, and this is simply a very, very sharp, acute point piece of surgical stainless steel. And there's 2 of them. You just tear it open, and it's just a really fine point, and you can dig in there and get your splinters out. And of course, you can then clean the area with any of the various topical ointments that they provided. In addition, we've got some antibiotic ointment. This is bacitracin made by Curad. So you got 2 packages of antibiotic ointment, and that kind of goes along with your Band-Aids. Then we've got some tape, and this is a micropore tape. It's made by 3M. Again, name brand stuff. This is a 1/2 inch wide, so some decent quality medical tape. Then we've got a tampon, a single tampon, and this I don't think is name brand. I don't know what brand that is, but a single tampon, and this would be used for really 2 things. One would be for its intended purpose, which would be for a menstrual cycle, and the other would be potentially for a nosebleed. Epistaxis is the medical term for a nosebleed, and there are ways to stem and slow the bleeding when you have a nosebleed without using something like this. I personally don't prefer putting things in the nose, but that's really the only other kind of accepted use for a tampon in the medical industry. It is never advisable to plug or try to pack a wound with a tampon. The amount of blood that these absorb is very, very small compared to something like compressed gauze or things that are actually purpose-built for things like wound packing. So gunshots, stabbings, we don't want to be putting tampons in there. So menstrual cycles and potentially a nosebleed. But they throw it in there, so that is that. Then we've got 2 doses of aspirin, which again, I like that they include some medications because it's often forgot in basic first aid kits. And you have 2 doses, which I like. Aspirin is a great medication. It has a number of different properties. I mean, it does so many things. It's an antipyretic, so it can reduce body temperature to treat fevers. It's also an antiplatelet, to essentially, for lack of a better term, kind of thin blood and allow blood to flow a little more easily in scenarios such as cardiac arrest. So aspirin is a good medication, but it's also a very common allergy. A lot of people are allergic to aspirin, and the acronym or the initials for aspirin are ASA in the medical industry. So we would often see people allergic to aspirin, and so they also include some ibuprofen, which has a lot of similar properties. However, ibuprofen, unlike aspirin, is also an anti-inflammatory, so aches and pains and things like that, it works pretty well. And so for the person who's allergic to aspirin, ibuprofen may be a better option. So I like that they give you both. And then lastly, for the medications, we have what they just call Diphen, which is diphenhydramine, which is the fancy medical term for Benadryl. So this is going to be for your allergic reactions. And this can literally be life-saving. Obviously, an anaphylactic allergic reaction, you're going to probably need something like an EpiPen and further levels of medical care. But for your basic allergic reaction, Benadryl comes in super handy. So you get 2 doses of Benadryl. And that's the full contents of this kit. And I think it's fantastic because you get kind of a little bit of everything. You get some topical stuff, you get some medications, you get some kind of basic first aid trauma, if you will. And then you get a few bonuses like the burn gel, the tampon, the face shield, plus room to expand. And for $20, I feel pretty comfortable recommending something like this because although you could build your own and probably do it cheaper, oftentimes to get the individually packaged items, you have to buy them in bulk, which is quite costly actually. And one of the things that I love most about kits like this is that every single thing that we've looked at is individually packaged, with the exception of the tape, I guess. So, you know, if you need aspirin, you're just tearing open one package and not opening an entire bottle, you know, so I do like that. And then again, the fact that they kind of just stepped it up slightly by giving you things like a CPR face shield and compressed gauze to do things like wound packing, I think is fantastic. Plus, you got plenty of room to expand. So for kind of a basic, just all around good quality first aid kit that has a pretty comprehensive set of components, I think it's a total win for $19.99, which is why I spent my own money on it when I was there purchasing this item. So yeah, that's the Advanced First Aid Kit, what they call the Base Med Advanced First Aid Kit from Live the Creed. Let me know what you guys think. You know, people ask me all the time. I get messages on Facebook and Instagram saying, hey, I'm looking for a trauma kit. I'm looking for a first aid kit. Sometimes they want something they can just buy off the shelf. Other times they want a list of components to build their own. If somebody asks me, I just need a basic first aid kit, this is the one I'm going to recommend, period. And it's not because it's the best one on the market. I don't have a ton of experience with pre-built, just kind of basic first aid kits, but the ones I have seen are inferior to this one in quality and in how comprehensive it is. And the prices are generally not much cheaper, actually. So I think the value is there. So yeah, if you just want something that'll kind of cover most of your bases for your day-to-day stuff, I think this is a good option. So that is it, the Advanced First Aid Kit from Live the Creed. I'll leave a link below if you want to check out Live the Creed's website and all the other stuff that they offer. And stay tuned for an upcoming video on this product, which is pretty darn cool. So that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them down below. I appreciate your time, and I will talk to you soon.